being a roadie can sometimes feel almost like an abusive relationship. The environment in which we're doing it is very taxing physically, but we have been conditioned to put the show first. You are riding adrenaline highs and lows. It can be very cruel and not give you a lot back from what you're investing.
I'm Paul Clemson. I've been a 22-year touring audio engineer. I've worked for Tanya Tucker, John Legend, The Roots, Alicia Keys, Jill Scott, Kelly Clarkson, Justin Timberlake, Drake, and also at the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon show. I'm also the co-founder of the Roadie Clinic.
I'm Courtney Clemson. I've been around on a lot of those gigs. I've also led my own career in production for over 20 years. And then eventually it led me to being a full-time manager for Paul's career. And that is where I started taking care of roadies. Our flagship location for the Roadie Clinic is here in Niles, Michigan at 205 East Main Street. We exist to empower and heal roadies and their families by providing services and resources tailored to the struggles of the touring lifestyle. I am making care packages for a bunch of roadies. It's just something that shows up at the hotel when they get there. Hopefully it's a few things that maybe they forgot when they were packing, or maybe they didn't think about because they're going someplace new. Whatever it is. 1 down, 9 more to go.
A roadie is a traveling touring technician who leaves their homes to provide technical support to events and shows around the globe, bringing in gear, setting it up, doing a show, tearing it down, and moving on to the next city.
It doesn't stop, it doesn't slow down. You're on your feet, you learn how to do 30,000 steps a day, you learn how to sleep in small spaces, you learn to function on very little sleep. You're away from your family. Those are some of the sacrifices that people in this industry accept because there's something in our souls that keeps us coming back to this role.
There's a gig I remember that was on the heels of 3 months of rehearsal, unending, into one of the biggest shows of my life that ended with leaving that facility to go to a theater to do the evening show, and then going straight to the airport, back at the rehearsal, and start up the next day and continue on for the next 2 months. I was so brain dead that the artist asked me a question post big show, and I said the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life. That was one of the moments that I grieved where I was at personally. We fit in a doctor's appointment. It was very thorough and took my blood pressure and literally looked at me and said, "How are you not in the hospital right now? You gotta stop this." And to hear that message coming directly from him that was concrete and personal, that's when it started to get really isolating in life. When I was looking into the causes of PTSD, it included dark spaces, loud noises, paranoia, isolation. You're working in the dark, it's loud noise all around you. And then even during the show, everybody's in their own lane, and all those piled together made me realize we go through a lot. My father was a veteran, and he would routinely take me to the VFW as a kid. And a lot of those stories you'd hear from people who had been to war together felt like things we had talked about as touring people. Over the years, we would open up our house to people who were near. When we were in Nashville, that was super easy. But even moving back to New York, luckily where our apartment was located was close to the Beacon and 2 stops from Madison Square Garden. And I had also been at the NBC working for a while, so we knew a lot of people that would come through New York City. And if it was someone we knew, or if the vendor who knew us called and said, "Hey, we got a crew there, you know, they wanted to meet you guys," we'd have people over to our dinner table. Without fail, the phenomenon was people would talk for 4 hours.
Minimum 4 hours at our table. I remember one time it was the John Legend crew that came over. It was the hottest day in New York City in Central Park. And I think we had about 20 people in our 700 square foot apartment in New York City.
The idea of taking care of crew started to bubble up in conversation that night.
That's kind of where I started chatting about it with people on the crew. Like, I'm thinking about doing this, and it's gonna be an advocacy group, and I think it's gonna have a place where people can stay if they get kicked out of their house, which we know people who have. We know people where their families have literally disappeared while they've been on the road, and they've had no place to go, or they need 2 weeks to live someplace between tours. Give them a home base that no matter what happens in your life, you have a place to come where people who care, who understand your lifestyle. And then that's where Niles comes into the picture. The day I walked into those doors at 205 East Main, and it was a coffee shop at that time, and upstairs was a pit. 100 years of water damage and 5 layers of wallpaper peeling off the walls. And it didn't matter. I walked in there and I said, I can feel it. This is a space for our people. Luckily, property in Michigan is nice and cheap, so we snatched that up, and that completed the vision.
This was a little memento from the Roots when I was leaving the Tonight Show after getting it started for about 6 months. Quest approached me when he heard rumor that I was leaving. He said, "Well, where are you going?" And I said, "Well, there's 3 artists that Courtney would allow me to leave the Tonight Show for," and it was Beyonce, U2, and Timberlake. And he leaned in closer and said, "Which one was it?" And I said, "It was Timberlake." He's like, "Oh, perfect."
With Timberlake, he was doing the Super Bowl halftime show, and he was doing the Oscars and the Cannes Film Festival. He did every kind of show you could possibly do. This was like what we considered the dream gig, what we've been working for 13, 14 years, and we just assumed that that means our life is gonna change drastically. And it just got exponentially harder.
I remember the day that I mourned missing sleep. You'd roll out from an arena at 2 a.m. after loadout, and we'd usually arrive to the next city by 6 a.m. So it wasn't enough time to really get into that REM sleep, which is impossible on buses.
And that was also the gig where, in between the run from America to Europe, Paul's dad died. And I ended up joining him that summer in Europe.
It's funny because there's a lot of jadedness in our business, and everybody has to stand up on their own feet, and you're expected to leave it at home. We found materials on the internet that's like, check your shit before you come out, and this is by a tour manager website that's training the next generation.
We don't want to hear about your family.
And family's the most important thing, and I know we've all learned it over the break, but the thing keeps trucking on. The shutdown was abrupt. The pandemic, the break.
It was just an intense confusion and darkness. There was a lot of people that had literally sold off everything they could possibly sell off. They got all the grants that were out there and still felt like they had nothing available to them. There is not a roadie that I have talked to that was untouched by COVID.